Dysfunctional homes, as well as many cultures, rarely focus on feelings. Instead, we learn to focus on thoughts. It is no wonder that feelings might be confusing or hard to name for some of us. Some of us saw caregivers rage but deny their anger. Others watched parents or relatives use feeling words in ways that did not match the definition of the words. These inconsistencies made identifying feelings difficult. Hi, I'm Barb Nangle. I want to welcome you to my podcast, Fragmented to Whole: Life Lessons from 12-Step Recovery, where I help people heal their emotional, psychological, and spiritual wounds and make deep, lasting changes in their lives. I'm a boundaries coach who specializes in helping women who say yes when they really want to say no, and who neglect themselves because they're so focused on others. I've coached hundreds of people to create Boundaries by Design, a blueprint for life. I have a free boundary building starter kit at boundariesstarterkit.com. On this podcast, I share my experience, strength, and hope from recovery. I don't support or endorse any particular 12-step recovery fellowship, and I don't claim to speak for any 12-step fellowship. I don't believe that 12-step recovery is the only way to recover. You might need additional help. I'm an avid beachcomber and a formerly closeted fan of the Hallmark Channel, especially the Christmas movies. I wear fingerless gloves almost all year round because my hands are always cold. And I love taking pictures of license plates with my initials BN on them. My hope is that you'll find my words concretely helpful in improving your life, whether you're in recovery or not. If you like what you've heard on this episode, please screenshot it and share it on your social media. Be sure to tag me at Higher Power Coaching. This is episode 301, How to Reconnect with Your Feelings, a Key Step in Recovery. In this episode, I'm going to read a bunch out of an ACA piece of literature called the Loving Parent Guidebook. I put a link in the show notes to this book in case you want to buy it. I recommend that if you do, you don't just start working in it by yourself, but that you attend ACA meetings and work through the book with other ACA members and or do it with your ACA sponsor. So because I am doing some reading, I'm in my office. I normally record in my studio, aka my closet. So the sound quality might not be as good as normal, and you might hear some turning of pages and shuffling of pages. I hope the content will be worth you suffering through not having the ideal audio condition. So I'm going to be reading from chapter 10, which is entitled Feeling is Healing. Now, I have done a lot of work on feelings in my almost 10 years in recovery, and this chapter has fucking blown me away, which is why I'm reading out of it. So the first notion that I'm going to share that this chapter really hits home is that feelings are cues and signals to tell you what you need. Now, I knew feelings were cues and signals, but I don't think I understood the part where they tell you what you need, or at least it seemed like news to me as I read this chapter. So now I'm going to begin reading from the book, and then I will make editorial comments. So here we go. Dysfunctional homes, as well as many cultures, rarely focus on feelings. Instead, we learn to focus on thoughts. It is no wonder that feelings might be confusing or hard to name for some of us. Some of us saw caregivers rage but deny their anger. Others watched parents or relatives use feeling words in ways that did not match the definition of the words. These inconsistencies made identifying feelings difficult. When our feelings are met, we tend to experience pleasant emotions, such as glad, peaceful, playful, rested, and thankful. As we feel our feelings more, nuances get clearer. Glad can be happy, excited, hopeful, joyful, delighted, or elated. When our feelings are not met, we tend to experience unpleasant emotions, such as sad, scared, mad, confused, tired, and resentful. Starting with 4 basic feelings, sad, mad, glad, and scared, simplifies building a feeling vocabulary. Okay, so that's the end of that part of the reading. Now, I find these 4 major feelings, which I think of as feeling groups, to be very helpful. There's a guided meditation on page 30 in this book that I do kind of regularly. And one of the things it asks you to do is check in with your inner child about what they're feeling. So I always ask, are you sad? Are you mad? Are you glad? Are you scared? And I can almost always characterize whatever I'm feeling into one of those groups. And it really helps me, especially when checking in with inner children, because giving them only 4 feelings helps them more easily discern between them. All right, I'm going to skip to the next page, and this shit blows me away. This section is called Distinguishing Judgments from Feelings. So here it goes. As we begin to speak about our feelings more, we might think we're expressing a feeling when we're actually sharing our judgment or interpretation. This can happen easily because the expression I feel is not always followed by an emotion. For example, we might say, I feel ignored, which is our judgment about someone's behavior. We're saying someone is excluding us. It would be more accurate to say, I think you're ignoring me, which is different than saying, I feel sad because you haven't responded to a text I sent 3 days ago. When we express judgments to others, it can sound like blame and put them on the defensive. They are then less likely to want to listen. Now, I want to say something about that. When we are blaming someone else, it's an indication of being in victim mentality. Because when we blame, we're acting like we have nothing to do with the situation and have no choices. That is the stance of someone in victim mentality. And you may recall from my 7 episodes on victim mentality that coming out of victim mentality is hands down the most important paradigm shift I made in recovery. Okay, on with the reading. Our judgments and stories reinforce our tendency to live life from the viewpoint of victims and distract us from tending to our inner family members. We get trapped in the role of reactor versus actor when we focus on what we think others are, quote, doing to us, rather than on what is happening inside of us. Blaming other people prevents us from taking constructive action. While another person's behavior can trigger our emotional response, our feelings come from our needs. Plus, our judgment might not be true, and we miss the opportunity to better understand what happened. Perhaps the person feels overwhelmed with a personal issue and hasn't had a chance to respond to us. This applies to in-person interactions as well as calls, texts, and emails. So again, this talks about blame. And remember, when you are blaming other people, you're acting like you don't have any options. You're thinking like a victim. And when you blame other people, they often feel blamed, which means they're much more likely to go on the defensive. And when you put someone on the defensive, conflict has ensued. If you want real communication instead of conflict, you don't want to start by putting someone on the defensive. All right, back to the reading. To begin translating judgments into feelings, recall a time when someone seemed to be ignoring you. Tune into your body. You might notice anger, frustration, sadness, fear, loneliness. Perhaps you feel warmth in your face, tightness in your chest. Notice any difference you feel between a judgment, such as I felt ignored by Alex, and expressing a feeling, such as I felt hurt and disappointed when Alex didn't return my call. Now, I can remember this exact same kind of scenario from my early years in recovery. I sent a message to somebody that was something like, hey, I'm thinking of you. And the next day when I didn't get a text back, I realized I had been looking for some kind of response. And so I started making it mean all kinds of shit, like they don't like me, they don't love me, I'm annoying them, blah, 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 blah. And then the next day, they sent a message back saying, love you, I've been busy, sorry I didn't respond sooner. So I made up this whole big story about what was going on. It was just that they were busy. It didn't mean anything about me. I was judging them, judging me, and feeling like shit. But I don't think I allowed myself to tap into that feeling and discern that it was hurt or disappointment, like in the example with Alex. Now, the reading goes on to say, next, pay attention to the words you use to express your feelings. If they suggest that someone is doing something to you and imply wrongness or blame, they are most likely judgments, not feelings. Some examples are abandoned, manipulated, cheated, betrayed, insulted, rejected, attacked, blamed, or pressured. Statements beginning with I feel that or I feel they tend to be judgments, not feelings. For example, I feel pathetic as an artist rather than a feeling as in I feel disappointed in my ability as an artist. Listen for the words that, like, as if, or pronouns or names/nouns after I feel. For example, I feel like a failure. I feel as if it is useless. I feel they don't like me. Or I feel Pat is inconsiderate. If we think we're a failure, perhaps we're feeling discouraged, sad, scared, or hopeless. If we think someone is being inconsiderate, we might feel hurt or angry. Now, when I read this, I was like, holy shit, what the hell? I can see that I have 100% done this. On some level, I think I knew that these weren't feelings that I was expressing, but I don't think I understood that they were judgments. Now, there is some text in a little box in the margin that gives more examples like, I feel that you don't listen to me. I felt discarded. I felt manipulated. I felt abandoned. These are judgments, not feelings. They're interpretations about what others are doing to us. All right, the next part I'm going to read is a table, and it has 3 columns. So column 1 is judgments or interpretations, which are not feelings. Column 2 is could you be feeling? And column 3 is what could you need? In the first row, the judgment is I feel like a failure. Could you be feeling discouraged, hopeless, sad, scared? And could you be needing to matter, be valued, trust? The second one is I felt interrupted. Could you be feeling angry, frustrated, resentful, hurt? Could you be needing respect, to be heard, consideration? The next one is I feel you don't listen to me. Could you be feeling frustrated, hurt, sad, angry? Could you be needing to be heard, to matter, caring, connection, shared reality, trust? The next one, I felt discarded, is the judgment. And could you be feeling is hurt, sad, ashamed, angry? And could you be needing to matter, respect, consideration, caring, belonging, to be seen, to be valued? The next one, the judgment, is I felt manipulated. Could you be feeling angry, powerless, frustrated, scared? Could you be needing autonomy, empowerment, trust, equality, freedom, connection, authenticity, integrity? And the last one, the judgment, is I felt abandoned. Could you be feeling lonely, hurt, sad, scared? And could you be needing connection, belonging, support, caring? And the text right below that table says, when parts of us get triggered, we can use any judgments that arise as signposts to reach our underlying feelings. We can slow down to do a reparenting check-in, do some journaling, or take a mini mindfulness break. If we're having trouble connecting to our feelings, we can reach out to a sponsor or fellow traveler. Now, I wrote so good in the margin on this because I was like, wow, this is really amazing. I've talked like this for much of my life, and I know that I'm not the only one. So I'm going to be much more mindful and aware of whether what I'm saying is an actual feeling or is it a judgment. And if it's really a judgment, what's the actual feeling I'm feeling? And then What's the need underneath that? I feel like I should probably photocopy this table and carry it around with me. Now, feelings work is just about the most important work in recovery, especially in the ACA program. Feelings are the language of humans, and unfortunately, many of us have had our feelings pounded out of us. This is especially true for adult children and especially for men. I remember hearing some male and masculinity researcher many years ago say you can't have a bunch of soldiers and warriors killing other people when they have feelings, which is why we've basically beaten the feelings out of men for centuries, because they've been the warriors and the soldiers who've had to do the killing. And it's hard to live with yourself when you've been feeling a lot of feelings. It seems to me, though, that we're at an evolutionary point in our history as humans where there's a lot more people paying attention to feelings. Social and emotional development is being paid attention to in schools more frequently. I know that the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence does training in schools with kids, and they start with the administration and the teachers before starting with the students, because you can't have adults teaching emotional intelligence to children if the adults don't have emotional intelligence themselves. So there's definitely a movement afoot, and in my opinion, it cannot come soon enough. The main reason so many of us have spent years drinking and drugging and eating and gambling, etc., is because we're trying to numb our feelings, because we don't know how to manage them. We don't know how to make sense of them, and we're not sure how to handle them. And if that's you, clearly you are not alone. And I want to share a fantastic book that honestly, I haven't really read it myself, but a very good friend read this early in her recovery at the recommendation of her therapist who worked through the book with her. And she just raved about it. And her life has been transformed in terms of her emotions. It's called The Language of Emotions, What Your Feelings Are Trying to Tell You by Karen McLaren. So I've recommended it to many people and gotten really good feedback, and I highly recommend it if you're having difficulty with feelings. I did put a link to it in the show notes. I do a lot of feelings work with my clients because feelings are the number one thing that causes people to either cave when they do set boundaries or just not set boundaries at all in the first place. And it's typically because we're trying to avoid guilt and shame. Now, I know that having me read this and flipping pages is not ideal, but I just felt like this material was so fucking good that I just had to share it. What I found is that professional women are afraid people won't like them, so they don't say no. Then they become overwhelmed and resentful because they keep giving in to others and take on too much. What they really want is to have balanced relationships where there's give and take without having to have a confrontation. But they think the problem is that if they knew just the right words to say, things would go more smoothly and they'd be able to stick to their boundaries. So they end up letting people walk all over them and then explode when they can't take it anymore. But the real problem is that they don't know what's okay with them and not okay with them because they're so focused on others. That means they don't set limits or ask for help. What they need to do is focus internally to get clear on what matters to them so they know what to say no to and can communicate that clearly with calm confidence. If this sounds like you, we should talk. Go to barbchat.net to sign up for a call with me. If you like this podcast, and I'm guessing you did because you're still listening, you will also love my weekly newsletter, Friday Fragments, which has short essays similar to the podcast. You can check it out at fridayfragments.news. That's fridayfragments.news. If you haven't already subscribed to my podcast on your favorite podcast outlet, please do that. It helps carry the message to more people. I started this podcast because there was so much wisdom in recovery that just wasn't making its way out into the world. So I want as many people as possible to hear it. I'd also love it if you'd leave a 5-star rating or a review, which you can do on Apple Podcasts. It helps other people find it so they can get the benefits that you've gotten from listening. If someone in particular came to mind when you listen to this episode, please share it with them. And my favorite place to hang out on social media is Instagram. I'm at Higher Power Coaching. Please DM me there. I'd love to hear what you got from this episode. I run private and group coaching programs on building healthy boundaries. Whether you need help with boundaries in your personal, professional, or romantic life, I can help. Head on over to barbchat.net where you can get on my calendar for a free 30-minute Better Boundaries consultation. I also do short-term situational coaching to help people make it through specific situations they're going through, such as divorce, empty nesting, preparing for retirement, or any phase where their identity is shifting. Regardless of the type of coaching, my ideal client is someone who is ripe for change. If that's you, I'd love to work with you. My goal with all my work is to help you make lasting changes in your life, like I've made deep, lasting changes in my life. Remember, it's never too late to recover. No one is beyond hope, and healing is possible. Thanks for listening.